Today's passage is Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 7 through 12. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? The one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Layla. Morning. My name's Travis. I'm one of the pastors here, and I am so glad to be here with you. I always love the first Sunday after school starts and just kind of like new energy, people back from vacation. I especially want to welcome this morning people who might be new here for the first time. I know some of you, maybe you've moved over the summer from a different place and you're looking for a place to connect, or some of you this morning might be new to church. Maybe it's your first time here. Maybe it's your first time here in a long time, and I really want to say how grateful I am that you're here, that you chose to be here with us, to try to connect in this place, and we're just really, really grateful to be here and to be the kind of place that hopefully gave you a good welcome this morning. I'm excited about Move Up Sunday. I'm excited about the 6th graders being in here with us, and I want to pray as I'm getting started. God, we love you. Thank you for who you are. God, I know that we're not here this morning. We're never here this morning as if we just had one experience throughout the week. I know that as we're here, we're not like-minded. I know that as we're here, we're struggling with different things. But God, I hope that what unites us is that we're here because we're hoping to hear from you, or we're hoping to even find out if it's possible to hear from you and maybe to connect with you and connect with other people. And so I pray that would happen. I pray that you would speak as we're gathered here to each and every heart, a message that we need to hear today. We love you. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. Well, again, welcome to our new 6th graders. Here's a little story for you. The summer before I went into 6th grade, we moved from Illinois to Tennessee. So I'd grown up basically in the same school, same friends. So imagine going in not only to a new school, but a brand new town. You didn't know anybody. That's what 6th grade was like for me. Now, in my old town in Illinois, small town, about 20,000 people, I loved riding my bike. Loved riding my bike. I could surf on the bike. Maybe don't do this. I could stand on the seat and the handlebars. I could do jumps. I could ride wheelies, and I did all of this without a helmet because it was the 1980s, and in the 1980s, parents didn't really love their kids. So like I said, we lived in this small town, and in Illinois, streets were built on a grid, which means every street either went east-west or north-south, and even if I didn't know exactly where I was in town, if I knew a couple of the side streets or a couple of the major streets, I could always find my way back home. So I pretty much had no boundaries. I could ride anywhere in town just about, and I could always find my way back home. So again, that summer we moved to Spring Hill when Spring Hill had 800 people in it. Believe it or not, that is reality. Cool Springs was a farm. There was nothing there. And we moved in with my aunt and uncle at the beginning of the summer as we were trying to find a place to land. They'd moved in about a year before into this newer subdivision, kind of between Spring Hill and Columbia. And so pretty shortly after we moved in, I decided I wanted to go for a bike ride. And so I got my bike out. I was getting ready to go, and my aunt looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you know where you're going?" And I looked at her like, "What are you talking about? I am 11 years old. I am a grown man, okay? Of course I know where I'm going." So I took off on my bike. I surfed the streets. I rode some wheelies. I found some places to jump. I had the time of my life. And after about 30 minutes of the ride, I realized I don't know where I'm going, right? So I realized I was completely lost. I had no idea where I was going. And I learned then an important truth that I still know today. Tennessee roads make no sense. Like, how many Old Hickory Boulevards does one city need? Let's get real about that for a minute. And so I began with just like this increasing desperation to try to find my aunt and uncle's road, and I could not find it. There was no grid of roads. And then I also realized in my desperation, I didn't even remember the name of their road. So had there been a grid, I wouldn't have been able to find it anyway. And so after searching for what felt like an hour for me, it was like 9 hours. I was hot, it was in the summer, I was out of water. I decided I was probably going to die out there. And so what I did is I just picked a house of a stranger. I rode down the driveway. I knocked on the door. And I did what any grown man would have done in that situation. I sobbed uncontrollably. Like to the point where the woman could not understand the words that were coming out of my mouth. I think she gave me a push pop in order to get me to stop crying, so that she could understand what I was trying to say to her, right? And so I didn't know my aunt and uncle's street, but thankfully I hadn't forgotten their names. And so this woman was able to look up my aunt and uncle's name in a phone book. Now, sixth graders, a phone book. It was this actual paper book that would magically come to your house every year, and you'd be able to find anybody's name and phone number in town. It was really great for things like prank calling. Before caller ID existed, and that's a different story and sermon for another day. So wear a helmet and don't prank call people out of the phone book. Let's just get that straight, sixth graders. But anyway, so she called, but here's what I learned. Here's what I learned on that day, a really important truth, I think, about life. It was simply this. Just because you can ride a bike doesn't mean you know where you're going, right? Just because you can ride a bike, it doesn't mean that you know where you're going. I'd never ridden on those roads before, and as much as I wanted to know how to go where I wanted to go, I never would have gotten there unless I stopped and asked for directions. Last week we started this series to kick off the school year called On Track. This is week 2 of that series. And the idea is that August, for many of us, the month of August, kind of the go back to school season, is for many of us like a New Year's 2.0. I mean, at this point, almost everybody is back in school. Some people had a full week last week. Some people start their full day tomorrow. I heard there's a party at the Bent Creek pool at 10. Is this true? I'm making it up. Now you're like, oh, that's a good idea. We're going to have a party, a celebration of back to school. Now, I know for me, August is that time of year when I like to look in the mirror and I like to think about how my life is going and if I'm on track in some really significant areas of my life. So it's a chance for me to kind of to refine my rhythm. I looked at this list of words last week. These kind of important areas of life, the alleys. I called them. So I asked myself, am I on track financially? Am I on track professionally? Am I on track relationally, parentally? Am I on track physically, spiritually, marriagally, and schoolily? I made it up last week. I kept it up this week just for you. Am I on track in these areas? And I don't know about you, but for me, as we talked about last week, there is often this huge gap between where I want to be and where I actually am in life. And what I've found over and over and over again is that the more closely I'm following Jesus, the more on track my life becomes. That's just something I'm learning over and over, more and more and more. That's true. The more closely I'm learning to follow Jesus, the more on track my life becomes. And so just like I learned on that summer day many years ago, just because you can ride a bike doesn't mean you know where you're going. And I think that same thing is true in life, right? Just because I know where I want my life to go doesn't mean I know how to get there. So there are a few things that I think are true about life, right? Number one, life isn't on a grid. Life doesn't exist on a grid like Jacksonville, Illinois roads. It's not on a grid. Number two, this is what I'm finding, there is no roadmap, right? Life's not on a grid, And there is no roadmap. You're not handed a map when you're born. You're not handed a map your first day of 6th grade. You're not handed a map when you get married. You're not handed a map when you have kids. It's like, hey, follow all these directions and you'll end up being just fine. There's no roadmap for any of it. Here's the third thing that I'm learning. We are all trying to get somewhere that we've never been before. Life's not on a grid. There's no map. And every single one of us is trying to get somewhere that we've never been before. So I was sobbing uncontrollably. I had a push pop in my mouth, right? This woman called my aunt. She was able to give her the directions of where I was. She knew where to go. She came to get me, to pick me up, put my bike in the back of the van. I got in the van. She took me home. I don't think I rode my bike again that summer. Here's the fourth thing that I think is true. Life's not on a grid. There's no roadmap. We're all trying to get somewhere that we've never been before. And here's the thing. You may not know where you're going. And you may not know how to get where you're trying to go. But there are people, I'm convinced of this. No matter where it is that you're trying to go in life, there are people who have been there or who are trying to go in that direction. And if you'll somehow get in relationship with them, you can learn from them, you can encourage each other, you can walk along the road with each other along the way. And that's what I think this scripture from Ecclesiastes is all about, that Layla read for us just a minute ago. In essence, it's differentiating two approaches to life. Right? The first is where we try to figure it all out on our own. It feels like that's the American way, right? If it is to be, it's up to me. And we forge out on our own, and we try to find our own way. That's one approach to life. That's what we read about here in verse 7. It says, "Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun." If you've ever read the book of Ecclesiastes, it's a real uplifting book. It talks about all the things in life that are meaningless. You should read, if you want to feel really good about life, read Ecclesiastes. It talks about all the things that we try to do in life that are actually meaningless in the end. But here's one of the things that it says is meaningless in life. There was a man all alone. I saw something meaningless in life. There was a man all alone. This echoes something from the very beginning of the Bible. At the very beginning of the story, in the book of Genesis, you read about the creation of the world, and there's this pattern, there's this rhythm that starts in the Genesis creation story. It's like a poem or like a song. It starts with, "And God said, let there be light. And there was light, and God saw that it was good." And then throughout the whole story, it follows that pattern. "And God said blank. And there was blank, and God saw that it was good." That pattern repeats until you get to Genesis chapter 2. And it says, "And God created a man, and God put him in the garden, and God saw that he was alone, and God said, this is not good." Right? That's the first thing that God says is not good, a man alone working in a garden. That might still ring true today. I don't know, right? Here's the interesting thing about this. Nothing has gone wrong in the story. God and the man have a great relationship. They've got an open relationship. They're walking together in the garden. They're chatting it up all the time. They're hanging out, right? But God observes that there is a person that's alone. And in that moment, God observes something that I think is still true. That we're made to be in relationship with each other. We were made for community. You may have heard it said that in every heart there's a God-shaped hole that only God can fill, and we try to fill that hole that God can fill with all these other things in life. And what Genesis chapter 2 is saying, I think, is there's also a human-shaped hole in every heart that can't be filled by anything else other than meaningful relationships with other humans. The words in Ecclesiastes, they kind of go on here, and they say this: "There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling?" he asked. Who's asked something like that before? Who am I even working for? Like, what's this even mean? "For whom am I toiling, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This, too, is meaningless, a miserable business." Again, here's what I'm learning in life, and I think this is consistent with the witness of the Bible from beginning to end. We were created to live life in community, not alone. And there's not anything else that can fill that need that we have for human relationship. There is no amount of money that can fill that need. You can be the richest person in the world and the loneliest person in the world. There is no amount of work that can fill that need. You can have this drive to achieve and achieve and achieve, but it will never be enough if you're doing it alone. There is no amount of busyness that can substitute for deep, authentic relationship with other people. A few of our staff had the privilege of going to the Q conference this past spring. It was at the convention center downtown Nashville, same time as the draft. So by going to the conference, I got a great parking spot for the draft. That's another story altogether. But Ben Sass, who is a senator from Nebraska, gave a talk, and it really stuck with me. It was a powerful talk. He said that 2019 will likely be the fourth year in a row of declining life expectancy in the United States. He said the last time we had even 2 years in a row of declining life expectancy was 1961 and 1962, when there was a massive flu outbreak that just kind of lasted over a winter that spanned the 2 years, and that was the reason for the declining life expectancy. But it is completely unprecedented ever in our history that we would have declining life expectancy 4 years in a row. He said it's not happening in any other industrialized nation, just the U.S. He said the two most common, the two biggest killers in our country are heart disease and cancer. Both of those are on the decline. Car accidents are on the decline. Many of the major killers of people are on the decline. He said what's increasing is deaths among 25 to 45-year-olds attributed to these four things: opioids, suicide, addiction and overdose, and liver disease. 25 to 45-year-olds are seeing a decline in life expectancy from opioids, suicide, addiction and overdose, and liver disease. And what he said is he believes that this is a canary in the coal mine of an epidemic of loneliness and a collapse of community that we're experiencing in the United States. In 1990, people reported on average that they had 3.2 friends, like real friends, not Facebook friends, not people who followed them on Instagram, but they had, on average, 3.2 people that they would have regular conversation with, people that they could confide in, people they knew they could go to if they had any need whatsoever. 3.2. In the 29 years since then, that number has been cut in half on average. People report half of that, and 40% of people in the United States say they have between 0 and 1 real friends. There's an epidemic of loneliness that's plaguing our country. Studies show that most males don't build any significant friendships or relationships after the age of 25. Studies show that 60% of 65-year-old men report saying that their wife is their best friend. And 29% of 65-year-old women report saying their husband is their best friend. Just let that sit for a minute, right? Just let that sit for a minute. The bottom line is that we were not designed to live life alone. That's not how we were created. That's not how we were made. There was a study done, I read this week, there was a study done at Harvard on the effects of isolation and human relationships, and researchers found that the most isolated people were 3 times more likely to die than those with strong relational connections. They went farther with this study. They studied the effects of food and isolation. They said people who had bad health habits, such as smoking, poor eating habits, obesity, alcohol abuse, but had strong social lives and strong social ties, lived significantly longer than people who had great health habits but lived life in isolation. What this means, friends, it is better to eat fried Twinkies at the fair with friends than to eat broccoli alone. Amen. Let us pray. chocolate-covered bacon with, it's like I could really go down a trail with that. I'll try not to. Here's the deal. Everything that moves people toward satisfaction in life, happiness in life, has to do with digging in community, making real friendships, forming actual deep relationships for men and for women. That's how these words from Ecclesiastes end. They offer the second way to live. The first way is to live in isolation and alone, and it says it's meaningless to do that. But the second way, maybe you've heard this before, simply says this: two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Friends, this is why we are instituting snuggle time in all of our village groups this fall. Okay, that's not true. That's probably a bad idea, right? It goes on. Though, I just want to see if you're paying attention. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Jesus had a phrase that he used when he was talking to the disciples that was really picked up by the rest of the New Testament in talking about what Christian community is supposed to look like. In the Gospel of John, chapter 13, Jesus is talking to his disciples. He's just washed their feet, done this incredible act of love and service to them, and he gives them this command. He says this: "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you." That showed up differently when I did it on the screen. Apparently, it's one another that you can't see. One another is the blank. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. From there, I heard somebody say this week: the entire rest of the New Testament. When you open the rest of the New Testament, you see that the primary activity of followers of Jesus is one anothering one another. Right? The entire witness of the rest of the New Testament, when it comes to how you're supposed to live together, is one anothering one another. Something like 51 one another statements in the rest of the New Testament. Here's some of them. Forgive one another. Accept one another. Care for one another. Encourage one another. Submit to one another. There's more. Bear with one another. Restore one another. Carry one another's burdens. Greet one another with a holy kiss. I was just saying that because Amanda's in this service. It's in the Bible, right? Sorry. As Parker Palmer says, Parker Palmer is a pastor who writes these really beautiful things about living life in Christian community. He says this: the journey, he's talking about life, the journey has solitary passages to be sure, and yet it is simply too arduous to take without the assistance of others. The journey of life, it has solitary passages. There are things that you will have to walk through by yourself for sure. But it is simply too arduous to take without the assistance of others. Listen, life isn't on a grid. Life is not on a grid. Life is not predictable like Illinois roads. There is no roadmap. There's no roadmap. You're not handed a map when you start life, when you choose to follow Jesus, when you're born, when you get married, when you have kids, when you start school. Nobody gives you a map and says, this is how you should do it, and this will take you exactly where you want to go. We are all trying to get somewhere. Each and every one of us is trying to get somewhere that we've never been before. Just because you can ride a bike doesn't mean you know where you're going. Just because you know where you want to go in life doesn't mean you know how to get there. But there are people who've been there. There are people who've been there. There are people who are walking along the same road that you're walking. There are people who can help. That's what it means to be the church, to walk alongside one another, to support one another, encourage one another, help one another, forgive one another, pray for one another. If you're trying to start the year on track, if you're trying to start this new school year on track, the way to live life on track isn't to try to figure it out on your own. That's not the way to do it. That's not how we were designed. And here's what I'm learning to be more and more true every single day. The more closely I follow Jesus, the more on track my life becomes, and the more I live life with other people in real, deep connection and community with other people, the more on track my life becomes, the more on track your life becomes. So I want to ask the band to come back up as we're preparing for a time of prayer and communion. This is why at the Village we place such an emphasis on the importance of groups. Because the reality is you need people who can walk alongside you in life. This is why if you have kids, I believe it is so important to have our kids in the Village Kids environment. Right? It's not because it's fun, although it is fun. It's not because they're having a Rice Krispie treat toppings bar today, although they are. And if you want to volunteer for the second service, I'm sure they'd be glad to have you. Right? We put our kids in Village Kids because it is so important for them to be in an environment where people know them and love them and can encourage them and who know the name of their pet goldfish. It's so important to have our kids in an environment where there are other adults who are saying to our kids the same kinds of things that we're saying to our kids. How many of you have kids? Don't raise your hand, they might be in here with you, but how many of you have kids that may not listen to you, but if somebody else says the exact same, put your hand down, sir. But if somebody else says the exact same thing, they'll listen to that. It's important to have a community around our kids. That's why Village Youth is so important. That's why our kickoff tonight, 6th graders through high schoolers, that's why it's so important to have people who are walking alongside you to help you figure it out. That's why if you're not in one of our Village groups, and if you're not experiencing community, and if you don't have people that you can go to, and if you don't have people who are going to you, that's why it's so critical, I think, as we start the year to become part of one of our groups. You've heard the expression, it takes a village. Everybody's heard that. Kind of a theme that we have for our Village groups this year is simply be the village. We want to be the village. If it takes a village, we want to be that village. We want to be your village this year. And that can only happen if you take that step of faith and put yourself in that kind of environment. So I want to pray for us this morning as we're preparing for communion. I want to ask you to think about a couple questions as we're coming into this time of prayer. Real simple questions for you. Number one is simply, who are your people? Who are your people? Can you think of a list of 3 people, 4 people, 5 people who you know beyond the shadow of a doubt you could go to them and they would be with you and they would help you and they would do anything for you in any situation and any circumstance? Who are your people? More specifically, not just people who would help you out or bring you a meal, but who are the people in your life who are helping you learn what it means to follow Jesus? If you're looking to be on track this year, you've got to have some people who are looking to be on track with you. And the second question is related, whose people are you? Right? This is not a one-sided thing. This is not just about receiving. It's about receiving in order to give. Whose people are you? Who are the people that could come to you? Who are the people that know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they could look to you, that you're praying for them, that you'd be willing to walk alongside them? Who are the people that you're helping figure out what it looks like and what it means to follow Jesus? My encouragement for us as we're trying to get on track this year is to have both of those lists in mind. Maybe during our prayer time, you want to jot out those names. Jot out the names of the people who are your people. Jot out the names of the people who you know could come to you, or maybe the people that you need to go to encourage and to pray for and to love. We're going to pray, and then we're going to have this time of communion together. God, life is difficult, and it can feel so incredibly lonely. There are times when we feel absolutely lost, and and we have no idea where to go. We have no idea where to turn. We have no idea who we can even turn to. And some of us this morning are in that spot where we just feel simply lost and alone. But God, I am overwhelmingly grateful this morning that that's not how you created us to live. That that's not your desire for us. That we don't have to go through life alone, that we don't have to walk alone, that we don't have to figure it out on our own. You made us for each other. You made us for community. And so, God, for those of us this morning who are feeling lost and alone, I pray that you would send us people to surround us, to love us, to embrace us, to walk with us along the way. And God, there might be those of us in here this morning who feel completely connected and we feel like things are great and we've got our group and we've got our people, and that is amazing. And I ask that what you would do for us this morning is give us the courage and the strength and the inspiration to become people for people who don't have people. That you would lead us into relationship, that you would give us the courage to step out in faith, that you would open our eyes to see the people who are hurting and lost and alone and to reach out to them. That no one would have to walk alone. So God, we love you. We thank you for Jesus, who promises to be with us always. It's in his name that we pray.